Okay, before we're able to get to the trunk release switch, we need to take this plastic covering off, as well as the surrounding foam that protects the cabling. It's held on by a couple clips. Just take that off or move it to the side so you'll be able to reach the plug for the trunk release switch. So now we're going to check what do we have in this plug once you disconnect it, starting from the lowermost pin. So it seems we have 12 at 3.6, it's 12 volts going down, and we have ground, and we have nothing. So let's check it again. We got about 12.8 volts ground, and we don't have anything in the third plug. So let's figure out why. Okay, this is the connector diagram for the trunk release switch on this vehicle. This is a full prong connector, but we're only using 3 wires. Hence, that's when we tested it, we only tested 3 wires. So let's go down. As you can see, it's going 1 through 4, top to bottom, but we're going to start with number 4 because that's how we tested it in the vehicle when we tested the connector. So we have 12 volts in prong number 4, and that's the rear compartment lid ajar switch signal. So I assume that stays 12 volts until the trunk release button is pressed, and I assume it switches to ground, but I'm not sure yet. So let's go to number 3. Number 3 is not used. Number 2 is ground, and number 1 is the rear compartment lead release control 2. So let me check out how this circuit is laid out, and then I'll let you guys know. So basically, when you press your button that's located on the driver's side door to open your trunk, that 12 volts that you saw in the switch that was constant 12 volts is going to convert to ground. Once it converts to ground, the BCM is going to know this and is going to respond by supplying 12 volts to the coil side of the relay. Now that you have ground, it's going to close the contacts of the relay. It's going to allow the 12 volts constant that was being supplied by the F23 fuse to pass through the relay. And in terms, that 12 volts is going to go into that light blue wire that is in pin number 1, which is the rear compartment lid release control 2. Now, when we checked it initially, we didn't have anything there. We didn't have any ground, or we didn't have any voltage. So upon further testing, I had someone press the button to see if I get any 12 volts there, and I did not get anything as well. No 12 volts, nothing. So what I think is going on, it's either the relay is not activating, some wire is broken in any part of the circuit. So before I start checking anything when it comes to wire continuity or relay function, first I'm going to just open the wire harness that's located near the trunk release switch that is insulated, because when you take into consideration when the motion of opening the trunk and closing the trunk on a daily basis, I've seen in a lot of Chevy vehicles that causes one of the wires in that harness to break or to not function anymore, because the contacts inside, the copper contacts, get stretched out and do not create any signal anymore. So let me check there first and see if I find anything there, and then I start checking other components if I don't find anything, like the functionality of the relay, any wire continuity issues, the fuse could be blown or anything like that. So let's do that. So to get to that wire, we have to take those white clips out that holds the wire harness to the trunk, as well as the electrical tape that binds it to the trunk as well. So take that off, and you'll be able to hang the wire harness as so, and just inspect it. And I was able to find that the cable that we identified earlier was actually broken here, which makes sense because the trunk goes up and down on a daily basis, which over time I've seen it before in other trunks. So that's the reason why there was any signal when we pressed the trunk release switch. So I'm going to be using this crimping and splicing tool so I can strip the insulator off my wire, and I'll be able to attach it to the heat shrink butt connector, which I believe is the best to bind 2 wires together apart from soldering. So I'm going to take the 2 wires and I'm going to put them on the butt shrink connector as so. This is the example of one. You put 1 wire on one end, 1 wire on the other end, and you use the crimping tool to crimp it and make sure you have a solid connection. So as you can see, I've crimped one end of the connector. Now I'm going to do the other end. Make sure you have a solid crimp. Apply enough pressure so that you know the wire is solid crimped. As you can see, it's nice and solid. Now I'm going to apply heat to both ends so that the crimp insulator binds to the cable insulator and you have a solid connection. Apart from the electrical tape that I've already used to wrap the wire, I'm also going to cover them in this harness insulator here and run it all the way up my wire, and then use electrical tape to wrap that around to make sure it doesn't have the ability to fall apart. You have to do this very neat, guys, because your neatness is going to show, especially when the customer is going to open her trunk. She doesn't expect the cable to flop down her face, so just make sure that you wrap this really neatly, put the clips back in place, and then to take the wire off, you have to take the electrical tape off these plastic pieces here. So make sure you put at least a zip ties. I feel like zip ties makes a solid wrap around that. As you can see, I'm going to show you how solid that looks. There you go, you see the zip ties creating a solid look. Don't forget to connect the trunk release switch back in its place. Okay, make sure you hear the clicking sound to assure its connection. Make sure you put every clip back in place that holds the foam like that protects the wiring harness as well as the trunk. Okay, if you happen to damage any, make sure you replace them with a new one, and make sure you put that plastic piece back in its place. It just clips on. Okay, now we're going to verify our repair, so I'm going to press the trunk release switch button. Let's see if it opens. There you go, guys. As you can see, the trunk opened now. Let me try it again. Let's verify this repair. So I'm going to press the trunk release button.